that you can ever have again.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm on record. So I'm going to break from protocol here because I typically start by before I say, "Hey, Bryan Jones, welcome to golfia.com or Golfia podcast." I read like a 3 to 4 minute introduction where I take your bio and I condense it down and I kind of introduce you to the audience. But I got 2 pages of your life experiences here, and it'd take me half an hour to write an introduction, or the introduction would take a half an hour. So let me just go through some of the highlights here.
30 years is a long time.
Tell me about it. So you're currently the head golf professional at the Black Oak Golf Club in Flanders, New Jersey. But looking at some of your credentials here, we'll start with awards. You have received from the New Jersey section of the PGA. I won't give the years. Teacher of the Year. You've won the Horton Smith Award twice, actually 3 times, because you won the National Horton Smith Award. You won the Professional of the Year Award and the Herb Graffis Award, accepted as section president. You have more than 20 years as, let's see, the assistant PGA board of directors. You've been there. You were on the board. You were also president for a while, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You were also president of the New Jersey Golf Foundation and a board member. You have taught a lot of courses. I'm not even going to read through all of them. There are many. I mean, at heart, you're a teacher, correct? I mean, that's
teaching the game and also the rules of the game. So
yeah.
it's something didn't expect to go that route, but here we are.
Yeah, here we are. So let's get to the good stuff here. You were appointed to the PGA, and we'll because I need clarification on the difference between PGA rules and USGA rules, but we'll get to that. So you were first appointed to the PGA Rules Committee in 1996. I think I was in high school at the time. You served for 6 years as vice chairman of that committee. You were a chairman of the committee for 3 years, and now you are currently honorary chairman.
Honorary chair.
They ran
out. A nice way that they kick you out.
Yeah, they ran out of titles for you.
I'm not out of the committee. I'm just out of the chairmanship role,
which is probably a good thing, right?
Yeah, it's not bad.
Okay, so in terms of your officiating, and this is the longest part of the list here. You have officiated at 18 PGA championships. You were the rules chairman at Bethpage and Kiowa. You were at 4 senior PGA championships where you were chairman at Trump, DC. 4 PGA KPMG championships. You were the rules chairman at each one. 5 Ryder Cups. You were the chief referee at Whistling Straits. 3 PGA Cup matches, chief referee at Barton Creek. PGA Women's Cup matches, also chief referee Barton Creek. PGA Grand Slam of Golf. PGA Junior Ryder Cup. More than 75 PGA of America member championships as PGA Rules Committee member. Over 275 PGA member tournaments in the Winter Series and Winter Championships. Is that what you were doing down in Florida?
Yeah, every year we do. I do 6 Winter Series events in December and another 6 or 7 in January, February.
Okay, so you really were too busy to do the podcast then, right?
They get busy. Yeah, it's a small staff down there. We move pretty fast.
Okay. You've done 4 Open Championships at Troon, Royal Berkshire, Carnoustie, and Royal Portrush. 2 Players Championships on the PGA Tour. BMW European Tour Championship. U.S. Women's Open, USGA Women's Open, USGA Senior Open, Senior Amateur, Junior Amateur, and 13 Masters tournaments. Does that include the one this year where you had to run for your life to avoid being crushed by a tree?
No, that most likely would be my final. It was a nice way to go out. So it'd be my 14th and final, most likely. But yeah, it was quite a way to end the visit with Augusta.
Can you tell us about that experience?
Well, it was just I was stationed. We have a different hole usually every day, and it was a little confusing with the weather and not finishing. So you go to whatever your next day's assignment is going to be. But I was currently on 16, and you sit basically nothing happens on 16. You just watch, maybe a couple balls collide on the green, but mostly just sit under near the TV tower. And right directly behind me is 17T, within 4 or 5 steps, really. And as I was actually up walking around while a group was on 16, was Larry Mize's group. He was playing his final Augusta, final Masters. And all of a sudden, you just heard this cracking, and you look up, and here are these 250-foot southern pines, starting to come down. Fortunately, they fell at an angle somewhat down the hole, but they did fall across where approximately 25, 30 patrons were sitting.
Wow.
And so for a few scary seconds, you thought you were going to see some people injured. And as they say, by the grace of God, no injuries. We suspended play for the day right there and then. And by the next day, you never even knew the trees were there. And that's how Augusta does things.
Now, did you literally have to run to avoid being hit by the tree?
The first momentum was I was actually not running, but moving towards the patrons. Your initial. I don't experience these things at all in life, but so my initial was like, oh my gosh, you gotta help these people out of here. And then you look up and see these things coming down, so you're going to end up in the middle of them. So I stopped and I got on my radio to call. Before they even hit the ground, I had called medical services and then called Jim Hyler, who runs the Masters tournament, to tell him what was happening.
Wow.
And then we have a lot of police presence at Augusta, and so very quickly there are a lot of professionals on the scene, and we were within 20, 30 seconds able to determine that there were no injuries. And so I relayed that information, and then they blew the horns to stop for the day.
Okay. Now, why do you say that's going to be your last Masters?
It's I'm fortunate to have had as many. Again, with my committee, which I'm sure you and I will discuss, going further. We have a certain amount of invitations from a PGA of America Rules of Golf Committee,
Oh,
and so our chairman, as you serve as a chairman and vice chairman, that's when you're going. So as I moved up through the chair with 3 vice chair roles, and then a chairman role, and then a couple of other years before I was asked to go, we had more spots at the point. So it's basically time for the next crew of future chair persons, chairman and vice chairs, to
okay.
get their shot at it.
Okay.
I,
So
I
I'm
had
getting it.
I had more than enough. I had a lot of opportunity, which was
Okay. But I'm
fantastic.
getting ahead of myself because I like to start these interviews at the very beginning and talk about your backstory. Your early years, where you came from, where you went to school, siblings, jobs, how you got started in golfing business.
Yeah, pretty serendipitously. I started playing pretty much. Had a half brother, and but pretty much grew up as an only child. My dad played golf. Like to say that back in the day in the Catholic religion, when you were born, about the most important thing ever was to get baptized right away, or else there could be consequences. And my godfather was actually away playing a golf tournament. So my baptism had to be postponed. So
Wow.
so you'd say, well, he must have been destined to play for that reason. But just played. Started when I was about 10. A lot of vacations with my mom and dad. To golf destinations. Played through high school. Didn't play in college. I went to Michigan State to start. Found out quickly I was not competitive at the Big Ten collegiate golf level. Well,
Mhm.
I didn't really expect to be. Got out of college. Did not get into golf right away. Was into the wines and spirits import business. Got kind of burned out on that and started working at a golf course, and said, "Hey, this is what I want to do."
Now, are you from Michigan originally?
No, I went to Michigan. That's how smart I was, or had bad high school advisors. I went there because it was a veterinary college. I wanted to be a veterinarian.
Oh,
I think
cool.
as quickly as I found out my golf skills were not up to par, neither were my intellectual skills to be a doctor of veterinary medicine. So that all changed direction quickly. But no, I'm born and raised in New Jersey, born in East Orange, and grew up in East Hanover.
Okay. Okay. So do you have dogs now? Are you still a pet lover?
Uh,
Animal lover?
of all things, growing up, we had dogs. We raised collies, and then and we really did not like cats. But through, again, the way life works, I have two cats. We have two cats that basically were feral cats that we kind of caught and brought inside, and one's watching me right now. But
Okay.
yeah, I never thought I'd go that way either.
They're always watching. They're always
Yeah,
watching. Okay. So okay. So your dad was your biggest influence in terms of golf, the beginning
yeah,
of
he
your.
loved the game. He was, he was a middle, he was a middle manager for New Jersey Bell Telephone. He ran. We talk about things that people don't remember. He ran sales for basically Yellow Pages. So if anybody who can listen to this remembers phone books, you had to be in the Yellow Pages. So that's where he was. But every waking moment outside of work, he'd find a way onto the golf course.
Okay. So you go to Michigan State. You discovered that you aren't competitive enough to succeed on the golf team or be a vet.
Yeah, so
You
far so good, right? Oh for
try
two.
to wine and spirit business. I hope you haven't given up on that interest.
No, no, I'm a plus handicap when it comes to
Okay.
my wine ventures.
Okay. And then you end up at a golf club somewhere.
Yep.
Where was that?
It actually started with the Morris County Parks courses,
Oh, okay.
Pinchbrook, Flanders, right,
Okay.
right,
Okay.
yeah, Sunset Valley, because
I
that's where
played.
I played. I played growing up. Again, my mom would just take myself, my next door neighbor, up to Flanders when it's now 36 holes. Back then it was three nines, red, white, and blue. And
Yep.
I think a Morris County kid could play for a buck and all day. And so she just and there was nobody there. My neighbor is a year or two older than me. We'd go up and just go around the place all day long, all summer long, five days a week.
Okay. Cool.
So
Yeah.
a dollar, and another $2. I got you a hot dog and a Coke, and
Yeah.
a
It's a little bit pricier these days. I've
little
played.
different, yeah.
I've actually walked off Flanders more than I've played it because of the slow play. When you're waiting 10 minutes on every shot, it's not fun.
Yeah. I
So
used to play Sunset Valley. This is, further along my amateur career, and go up as a single, especially in college. And that was the case. The 16th hole came up right to the parking lot. And usually by then we were almost 5 hours in. So most of my rounds there were 16-hole rounds. So
yeah.
I understand.
Okay. So then, did you work at Flanders?
I worked at all of them a little bit at a time. A lot of time at Pinchbrook. My first
Okay.
golf professional, Cindy Cooper, who now works a long time for the USGA. So
Okay.
that was that dude. And I went over there not planning to do it. My next door neighbor was a starter, and he said, "Hey, I know you're not doing anything right now." And so I started as a guy outside, and then eventually, just quickly moved into the pro shop and figured out that I could play a little bit. So,
Okay.
let's go.
When did you get your PGA card?
1994, Class A. Yeah.
Okay. Were you
Yeah, so
at Flanders at the time?
by then I was up at Bowling Green in Jefferson.
Okay. How
Uh,
many clubs have you worked at?
really just from the county courses to Bowling Green, and then up to the Crystal Springs resort courses. So those are the New Jersey, and then now obviously Black Oak for the last 11 years.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about your golf teaching. And I have actually taken a lesson from you, and I'm happy to report that my handicap has gone from 16 to 18. So you haven't put into too much damage.
Never
No,
said I was good.
it was a good lesson. It was a good lesson. Then the lessons just don't seem to work on me. I could have Ben Hogan give me a lesson, and it wouldn't help, especially because he's been dead for a while. At any rate, so how many lessons do you think you've given over the course of your career?
I don't know. I know, as when I went to work with Dave Glenn's, it was really at the onset of when kind of golf schools, golf academies were starting to really catch fire in that early golf boom, 19 late 90s into 2000s, when the Jim McLeans of the world, Jimmy Ballard schools, Ballard Colbert. So golf schools became, a way that a lot of people came into the game. So my peaks, I was probably teaching 70 to 80 golf schools a year, a
Wow.
season, and approximately 1,500 private lessons. So it was busy, and so I did that for almost 17 years.
Wow. Okay. So you've given a few.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, do you have a teaching philosophy? I know that to get your PGA card, you have to kind of express what that is, right? I mean, it's a tough thing to get, by the way. Um,
Yeah, I mean, there's quizzing, there's some testing on teaching. It's certainly not, unfortunately for the PGA of America, it's not an area of emphasis as much as it should be. No, and again, I give David a lot of credit for this. Is that we really just we try to view golf as athletically as possible, and I think you see that now with the current generation in terms of fitness and but just treating it not like a bunch of connected parts, but an athletic movement, just like you naturally do when you throw a ball or try to swing a bat into a ball. And there's obviously some specifics you have to really agree on in terms of how to hold the club, aim the club, what does it do, how does it work, and but then you really try to get people. I try to get people to be athletic, and hopefully that's really helpful for those who come from some form of athletic background, as minimal as it might be. The harder, when I first started teaching, I used to teach a lot of folks who, for instance, a wife whose husband just retired and now she wants to learn to play, and
mhm.
you ask what's your athletic background, and there wasn't any. So those are more difficult. But if you get
Yeah,
somebody who's played some sports, there's always a connection that can be made.
yeah. What I mean, and I know that every swing and every person is different, but you must see common problems or problems that average golfers that play once every other week or occasionally that plague them.
I
Um,
think my history's been such that I feel like the hardest thing to do in golf, is, as silly as it sounds, is really to aim correctly.
mhm,
A lot of times, players tend to think that the body should be aimed to the target when actually it's the club face, if you think about it, and the body stands parallel to that. But a lot of players, particularly if you're a right-hander, they tend to aim well to the right of their target. And then over time, I mean, you think about that. If you actually hit it where you've aimed, you've hit a poor shot. And so if you don't correct the aiming, you now start moving the swing a different way, and you start swinging, above the plane, outside in, however, whatever you want to talk about it, over the top, all any kind of phrases that we can use. But a lot of that it can be traced back to, starting well and getting well aligned, and then, the sense of how to swing the golf club head, on the target line.
yeah,
And then for guys, particularly, a lot of tendency to try to power their swings through the upper body rather than try to I'm using your arms to me. It's just tension. Those are the most common things.
yeah. How much of an impact, for better or worse, do you think that online golf, and I'm addicted to it, has helped or hurt the game, or helped the average golfer?
Well, way back in the early teaching days, I would buy every book that I could get my hands on. Then I bought every audio tape and cassette tape, and then it turned into CDs. And this was all, the thing about golfers is they're just dying for information. And
Right.
from the beginning, they bought everything put out. That's why a lot of people made a lot of good money on golf instruction.
Yeah.
Uh, and obviously it's transitioned now into the YouTube, the video ages, and is it a benefit? Well, I think it's a benefit if you know who you are and what you're looking for, and it's a detriment if you just go on and just listen to somebody pitch a concept at you that might not fit you because you might not move that way. You're not built that way. There's a lot of that's one of the first things I do in figuring out a plan of attack for a student is, well, let's see how this person moves. What's intuitive to them, and then we'll try to cultivate a movement based on what they're capable of doing. But that's certainly not the case if you're going online and just kind of filtering information back in. It may not apply and do more harm than good, honestly.
Yeah. Do you think that the online instruction has taken away business from in-person pros teaching?
No, I mean possibly the opposite, because when they do go through this online process and they get worse, they
Okay.
had only one place to turn.
Okay.
So I think it's like I had a member of the Dr. Bissell came in the other day. He's a dentist. And I said, Doc, what's your favorite food as a dentist? He says, bagels. I goes, I got patients breaking more teeth on bagels than any other food. And so, it's the same thing with online. It's if it makes you worse, I'm the next step.
Do you watch it at all? Do you watch any of the online instruction?
Oh yeah, yeah, I watch it, and there's a lot of good stuff out, and then there's a lot of, as someone who has their own opinion about it, there's a lot of stuff that I don't think is very valuable.
Yeah. Um, there's a putting system called aim point. Are you familiar with the aim point putting?
Oh yeah,
Do you have an opinion on that, or you don't teach it, do you?
I don't, and so from that side of it, I find it. I got to be a little cautious. I don't have the enough information exactly on how it works, other than what I've observed and been told. Um, I just I think something like putting, it's really hard to take that and turn it into a physical action, whatever aim point is, using your feet to feel. I mean, I think we feel that intuitively. I think putting it comes more from a sense of your eyes, how you perceive the break of the land, that type of thing. And the biggest complaint with aim point is it's really slow.
Yeah, that's true.
When we get on that, talk about it, and you see players who do it from both directions now. And then I see a lot of players, working in a lot of college events that just seem to be doing it because everybody else is doing it. I'm not sure they're getting any information from it.
Yeah,
So from that perspective, I'm not a fan. Again, any instruction, if it works for you and you feel it made you better, then it's good for you. But across the board, I've got questions.
yeah. What percentage of the lessons that you give are short game, chipping and putting? Do people care about that, or
Well, unfortunately, it's a little bit of a reputation I have. I just love that side of the game. I love the challenge of it because every chip shot, every pitch shot, lob shot, everyone is different. You gotta have a real process for figuring out how to hit a good shot in those situations. So I really like that challenge my whole career, and so it's always been more of a strength in my game than anything else. So I do a good number of short game and putting lessons. It's really I enjoy that a lot.
okay? But my perception is that most people, spend a lot of time whacking balls at the range. Mostly, most of the time, they're driver only, and don't spend any time on their short
Right.
game.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And you get the love of it. I've got a good story about that with years now. I've been friends with and taught a gentleman named Bill Pennington, a writer for the New York Times,
Oh,
golf
sure.
sports writer. And I used to give, he lived up by Crystal Springs in Warwick. That's how we got together. And I used to just listen, Bill, you got to hit these little chip shots to learn this drill. And he told me years later was he used to do his practicing in the city at Chelsea Piers, where it cost, like 50 cents a ball.
Yeah,
And he says, I'm not going to waste my time chipping. I'm going to hit some drivers. And that's kind of the philosophy most people have is if I got a short period of time, let me go bang some drivers where in reality to improve, they'd be a lot better served if they just did some chipping and putting with that half hour they had. But I get it. It's a lot more fun
yeah,
to hit driver.
yeah. Well, listen, whenever I start to feel badly about my swing, I go out to the Flanders driving range and watch other people hit balls.
Totally agree. Makes you feel better.
Yeah,
I'm
it
not so
does.
bad
There's
afterwards.
always, there's always somebody worse than you are. So let's get into the officiating part here. Because first of all, you need to clear up for me because I didn't understand the difference between a USGA rules official and a PGA rules official. So maybe we could start there.
Well, let's start by defining the association. So basically, in the world of the rules, the United States Golf Association and the Royal and Ancient R&A essentially own the rules. They write them, they publish them, and the rest of the golf bodies we all play by them. So and of course within that, they conduct their own competitions. United States Open and the Open Championship, just to name a minor bit of what they do. And so they'll have their own people who officiate their events. When you get to the professional sides, the PGA of America, which is what I am as a club professional, we're basically the stewards of the game for clubs and facilities along the and we also have as PGA members, we have a series of tournaments. We own the PGA Championship. We own the Ryder Cup, the PGA of America, and so excuse me, the committee I serve on, about 34 members, PGA members who are rules experts. And so that's the committee that is the PGA of America. Then you go into the tours. You got the PGA Tour, LPGA Tour. Obviously, the players are their players, and they have their own full time rules staffs. So you have full time guys who work for the tour, guys and girls, and same thing with the LPGA Tour. So that's kind of the breakdown of golf. But yeah, a lot of the USGA, PGA Tour conversations is always a very confusing one to get under your. My mother never figured it out. Yeah.
Well, is there competition among the different, rules?
No, not at all. In fact, there's a lot of times where members of, for instance, over in more so over across the pond, as it were, the PGA of Great Britain and Ireland has been a constant feeding place for the DP World Tour. So a lot of my friends on the what was formerly known as European Tour, now the DP World Tour, they came from the club professional side. Not too much of that over here, although we currently have two of our committee men working for the Tour Champions, and so we've had quite a number through the years of they jump over and go to work for the Tour Champions. It's just a different kind of job.
Okay. When the USGA and or the RNA make new rules, do they consult with rules officials? Because you guys are on the ground. I mean, you guys are see the rules in action or not being adhered to, right? I
So
mean,
in a nutshell, the USGA RNA have rules of golf specific committees, as you might imagine, and then on those committees, on that committee, there are representatives from. We have one PGA of America representative. There is PGA Tour, LPGA Tour, so they have representatives who sit on the committees. When it comes actual time to vote, I'm not sure they have a vote that counts, but there's a lot of they have a lot of say in terms of just where they think a given rule or a change of a rule might go. So yeah, there's a lot of good dialogue between the governing bodies and the tours and the PGA of America.
okay. How did you get into this whole officiating game? Did you
Um,
apply? Are you invited? I mean, how does it work?
No, I early on, my very first when the structure of the PGA was different. I went to my first business school, and I had really I had no concept of I got the rule book as part of the kit that I had to learn, and I was really concerned that I didn't have a lot of rules experience through situations playing as an amateur. I can't even remember many. My dad was always just keep hitting the ball wherever you find it. So, um, you weren't trying to get drops or anything like that. So then I had an instructor who's turned out to be a real mentor in the rules, named Larry Startzel, who's a past chairman of the committee, and he was the instructor in my first class, and he really made it make sense, and I continued to follow classes that he taught, and then I just started helping the section level locally, and then back in 96, 97, the PGA of America, our national club professional championship, we expanded the qualifiers and we needed some more officials, and that's when I applied to be on the committee, and unfortunately got in. So and been there ever since.
So it is an application process. You have to raise
For
your
us,
hand and say,
oh yeah, for us it is for sure.
okay,
And there's qualifications. You have there's you were talking about the education classes you saw me teach. Well, those are basically the classes that we, the PGA and the USGA, we co-teach those, and there's a test, and it's a pretty hard one. And one of the monitors we use or qualifiers we use is somebody's score on the test. So for our level, PGA of America, to be on our committee and stay in our committee, you have to consistently score 90 or above out of the 100 to stay on our rules committee.
for how frequently do you have to take the
We
test?
have to we have to basically at any you have to re up any time between what we call a rules cycle. So the last rules change was 2023. Before that was 2019. So you had to get what we call a good score between 19 and 23, and now everybody after 2023 needs a good score again in the next 2 to 4 years.
Okay. I've read that very few people score 100 on that test, but you are one of those people. Is
Yeah,
that
I had a few good ones.
that's that speaks to your
I
knowledge of
haven't
the
I
rules?
haven't done it in the new since the 2019 changes. I've got I think 298s, but yeah, I can't quite crack it on the new.
You're slipping, Brian.
I'm going to work on it. Getting older.
Now, is there an average tenure for rules official or a mandatory retirement age? Or
No, certainly none for our committee. I think what you want to do is there. You don't want to stay too long. You don't want to stay until because getting that test score gets harder as you get old. Everything, and so our guys tend to cycle out when they see it. Like, you know what, I've been here a long time. Let's
yeah,
but we don't. We don't have any kind of mandatory age or anything.
yeah. Are you paid for these
No,
gigs? They don't
no.
cover transportation or
No, you
running.
cover. I'm not paid for the actual work. I'm certainly paid for my transportation, lodging, food for the event. Those are all covered. So,
Okay,
but in terms of being away from work, anything else? No, we're a in PGA of America. We're strictly a volunteer association.
okay. Now, how many women officials are there? Rules officials?
For us,
Yeah.
currently, we've got one, two, three. One of them is my better half, who's
Oh, is that right?
yeah, yeah, she got it.
Oh,
Yeah, so we are the nerdiest golf couple in the world. Yep, she's the assistant professional at Maplewood Country Club, and
oh,
is on the rules committee. And then we have currently two other women on the rules committee. So three out of the 34 are women on the
okay.
PGA
Not
side.
a big number. Is that? Are you trying to increase that or?
Tried to increase all rules knowledge for PGA members actually, but
Yeah,
it's probably pretty relative to the number of men versus women in terms of PGA members.
yeah,
We out of 27,000 members, if we 10% are women, that would be a lot.
yeah. So you and your wife sit around with a fine glass of wine because of your background in spirits and talk about golf rules. Is that?
It's more true than I'd like to admit. Yeah, especially when we're down and working. The only time we really work together rules wise is our winters. So
Okay.
that each and every day that gives you the opportunity to have something happen. You talk about it. We've got a great little staff on our rules team down there. So that and when we're both preparing, because she also teaches the rules of golf class, and so when we're preparing to teach, it's pretty arduous thing to do, even if you've done it a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of time where we're talking about how things work in the rules of golf.
Yeah. Well, at least you're talking. Um, so
Yes.
how are rules officials selected for specific events? Because some are probably more fun to officiate than others, right? I mean,
Well, certainly, like again, using our association, everybody would like to work the PGA Championship because it's one of the four majors, and so for us, it's a matter of you've got to put your time in. Things that we also run like we have the PGA Junior Championship,
mm,
Junior Boys, Junior Girls. We've got 8 or 9 other events that we run every year, and so as a member of the committee, you're expected to uh, to to work those events. Don't jump onto the committee and write down, "Hey, I want to work the championship in the Ryder Cup," so because there's definitely a level of expertise and kind of time in to earn that.
which is your favorite event to officiate at?
If you're going across the board, and I hate to do this to my own associations, but my 4 Open championships were just fantastic.
Yeah.
I could work the British, as we called it, the British Open. I could work that anytime they asked me. It's just a fun environment on the oldest golf courses in the world,
Yeah.
and it just has a feel about it. It's just fantastic.
Do you
And of
think you're?
course, let me not downside Augusta. I mean, that's
Yeah.
not fair because Augusta just doesn't count because it's so over and above what every other championship can possibly do.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Do you think European golf fans are more sophisticated or more? I don't know. better patrons than Americans that show up at events?
Uh, yeah, probably. I think. Well, first, when you get into
Excluding the Waste Management Open. Okay.
when you get into Europe, golf is still relatively low on the totem pole. Soccer is everything, as we
Oh
know.
yeah.
A lot of other places, skiing, cricket, cycling. When you get off the United Kingdom and get into the rest of Europe, it's not. I experienced that at the Ryder Cup in France. That the folks out there, they weren't real versed in the game, and even especially the marshals were. You really had to tell them what to do. So I think, yeah, I think the folks in the UK are pretty sharp.
Yeah.
I think they're pretty old school. But and the states, we're just they buy a ticket and drink beer and say whatever you want, and
Yeah.
makes
Exactly.
me very concerned. The Ryder Cup at Bethpage will be a unique experience, and I hope it's a good one.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite course in the UK that you either played at or
I
officiated?
just like the history of Carnoustie because I am a Ben Hogan guy, and the
Okay.
fact that I got to work there, and his one trip there in 1953 was his lone victory, and it's a really cool place. So
Yeah.
so far,
Did you
I'd
get to
say
see Ben Hogan play?
oh no, I wish no, but I watched every bit of video footage I could get my hands on.
Yeah. Because you're what, 93 now, so you could have seen him, right?
Yeah, yeah, I could have.
So how many at the average event, and it probably varies. I mean, how many rules officials are there, and how are they positioned throughout the course?
You can do it any number of ways. So, for instance, like Augusta and our PGA Championship, you're going to have a mix of people who are stationed on holes, and then another mix of people who we call rovers, who are generally their job generally is has to do with pace of play. And some events, so let's just take the PGA Tour. They're going to have 8 to 10 guys out there, and they're just all in carts in covering areas.
Yeah.
So it depends on over at the Open Championship, you're going to have a walking referee with every group, which again was part of the fun of the Open Championship that
Yeah.
you actually just walked 18 holes with your group every day. So it can vary depending on how the association wants to set it up.
Do players kibitz with you? I mean, they must. Some of you must recognize you and know you, having because you're there.
Oh, yeah, yeah. He was good about that. Rory's very good about that. I've known Rory since he played in our junior Ryder Cup when he was 15, and it's neat because I was there and yeah, kind of known him since then, and he's always very kind to me. Recognizing that. Generally, no, though it's that's their office out there, and so your job is just to be there if they need you, but. Um, there's not a lot of chatting going on.
Yeah. Yeah. In general, do you think tour players know the rules as well as people think they do?
Well, I don't think they know them well at all.
Yeah, I was hoping
And
you
and
say that.
I think part of that is by plan. I think some definitely do, and again something that the European tour, now DP tour, especially back under my two dear friend John Paramore and Andy McPhee, who used to be the chief referees, and they made a very conscious attempt to get the players to do, especially basic rules. Take relief from a sprinkler head, things that aren't really that hard to get them to do their own. I think that what the players do know is that if they get direction from a referee and it ends up being incorrect, they're not on the hook for that. So,
Okay.
so, so I think a lot of times, ball gets in a funny place, and the player will just, hey, get the referee over here. I don't want to try to do it and get it wrong,
Yeah.
because if I end up playing from a wrong place, then I'm going to be penalized. So I think a little bit of the lack of knowledge is to basically so they can be secure that they don't get penalized by making mistakes.
Yeah.
It's too bad, sort of.
At some of the events I've attended, I've always been surprised to see players where a ball will land in an area that I would be happy to hit from, but they'll call a referee over and say, you know, can I, can I get a free lift? They seem to be a little bit spoiled in that regard. Is that?
they like perfect lies. So if it
Yeah.
gets a little off the beaten path, and they'll what the heck? Let's call somebody over and see if we could get something. But yeah, I agree. They it's not happening if they're hitting in the middle of the fairway. That's for sure.
What's the most controversial ruling you've been involved in?
I had nothing controversial. I had a funny deal back at Valhalla with the year that Rory won, basically in the dark, and I was up. I had Ricky Fowler and Phil Mickelson. And we were in the group ahead of them, the last group, because in the PGA Championship we have a walking referee with the last five groups on Saturday and Sunday. So I was in the group ahead, and in order to expedite trying to finish by dark or before really it was dark already, we kind of played up onto they played up into our group twice, and it just got a little the communication got a little funny. So Phil got a little hot, but yeah, that was it, and a lot got made of it because it was unusual. One group pulling over the side to let the other group play so that they could walk, and we're just trying to get done, which we did. Rory, was a great champion, so it certainly worked out. But it was a little funny. Next day I got home, I got a call from the president of the PGA of America saying, "We really have to talk about this thing." And I said, "Well, there really wasn't a thing. We were just trying to get done." And the guy behind me was the chairman of our committee at the time. So when he
Yeah.
tells me what to do in my earpiece, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So it just got a little unusual.
Have you had an occasion where a player has given you some grief over a ruling and you've had to kind of go toe to toe?
Anytime the toughest ones, anytime they're like you said, I think you said it perfectly. When you think the player's in a good liar, and the player looks at you and is looking for something. Anytime you get into a judgment situation, should the player get relief from something, and you have one thought on it and they have a different thought on it. So those are the only those subjective calls, and but fortunately, if we've all done our homework and we know our golf course and we know what the conditions are, if for instance, if you think about like Augusta just last week, after all the rain, there were plenty of areas where the patrons were walking that were just they were just dirt and mud, and but by rule, if you don't have any visible water, any visible temporary water, just because it's grass that's turned into mud, it's no relief. And so when you get into that situation, you're going to have some various opinions. And the thing that you always remember there is you don't try to even though you're right, you don't take that attitude. You always call another official, come in, hey, you give this guy your opinion, and usually they know that what the first opinion was. So
Yeah.
you get your support in that case, but can't blame them for asking.
What event was it with Dustin Johnson where he took a practice stroke in a he lost the tournament as a result? Were you
Yeah,
in that? Were
Whist-
you at that event?
Whistling Straits.
Yeah.
The year is going to escape me, but yeah, and that was another situation. If there's roughly 1,500 bunkers at Whistling Straits,
Hmm.
and there are as many of them that are outside the rope lines that are inside the rope lines, and we had posted reminders everywhere that you could see. Remember, any of these things that are sand are bunkers, even though a lot of people and so he hit this ball in 18 that got outside the ropes, and it was actually our chairman of our committee was walking with him that day, and the thing that went kind of unfortunately sideways was Dustin asked this our chairman to go and move a certain group of people. And if I know for a fact that if our chairman was still walking with them and got to where the ball was, he would have reminded Dustin that he was in a bunker. But Dustin
Oh,
quickly made a couple practice swings and hit the sand, and that was it. So yeah,
yeah.
but he couldn't. He couldn't have been nice. He couldn't have been. I don't want to say he's nice. Nice. He was nice about it, but he couldn't have been more. He understood. He didn't like
Okay.
it, but he understood it.
Yeah. If a rules official makes some kind of a incorrect call, do they get what's the did they get booted or reprimanded, or what's what are the consequences?
Um, well, you don't want to make a lot of them. That's for sure.
Yeah,
I think for us, if you've got to, most of our guys are all real good, but if you get that rep that you get not getting as sharp as you should be, you're probably not going to get the best events to work. Just say it that way.
yeah, yeah.
I'm,
Well,
I'm sure the tour might have a little different protocol for it, but the good news is that on that highest of levels, I don't really feel there's a lot of mistakes being made.
yeah. Do you have a point of view on viewers calling in when they see rules violations on television? Do you think
Yeah,
that's
well,
fair?
fortunately, that's mostly gone away. Where especially at the majors now, we all have people in a designated rules official watching the broadcasts. The hard thing is as there become more and more of these feeds, internet feeds, you know uh, different Sky Network and NBC and all different feeds going on, that you're trying to watch a lot of golf at the same time. So we try to get ahead of it, that first of all, that if something funny happens, you're right there, and then get the replay and see if you do see anything. But certainly I don't like the concept of it at all, because it's just not fair to that player who's just singled out for an instance, and somebody on the couch happens to wind it up and bring it down into ultra slow motion and prove that the ball did move, or whatever the
Yeah,
situation might be. And so now actually in the rules there's something called the naked eye standard, that even if video evidence it shows that, let's say, the player caused the ball to move, if the player couldn't have realized or known that, because it was so impossible, so it moved a millimeter,
yeah,
um, that that pet player wouldn't be penalized.
yeah.
Can't
What,
see
what
it
do you
with the
think?
naked eye.
What do you think the most confusing rule or rules are, not just for PGA pros, but for the average golfer?
I,
What
I
do they
read
get?
when you
What do they
wrote
get
that
wrong
question.
most often? You know?
There's a It's funny when you're at the club and you're talking about things, and well, we were here and we know that the rule works this way, and you're like, no, it really doesn't. I think in general, let's take the concept of penalty areas, as we now call them, and you have two possibilities. They could be marked with yellow, or they could be marked with red, and so the idea that the relief is only one. There's only one difference, which means in the red penalty relief, you get this option to come out sideways laterally, which you don't have if you have a yellow penalty area. And I got to say, it's not really all that easy to understand, if you're just starting out. But I think conceptually it's not that hard once you get it. But that's probably number one. Well, why is this one? What does red mean versus yellow? And there's really not much difference, but the subtle difference is hard for a lot of people to digest.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I've been involved in some club tournaments where a fellow member will get back in the clubhouse and claim that a fellow competitor did something wrong. Um, different point of view on that. I mean, I guess if it's a club championship, maybe it's something, but
If you're not there to see it, it's hard to, that's always the hardest. The hardest part of the job is when that phone rings, and I get, all my friends and other clubs, and all the time that something happens at their club at an event or whatever, and you get that phone call, and he said, well, the player said that this happened, and he says that this happened, and I said, well, it's really hard unless there's a real obvious gaffe to
yeah,
say, I wasn't there, I didn't see it. So, by our rule of thumb is, if it's one versus one, then you've got to. The game is based on integrity.
okay,
That you would side with the player. If it's two against one, now we might start looking at this a little differently.
okay. Is there? You don't have to name any names, but are there some pros on the tour who are notorious for always asking for relief, or are kind of the referees kind of at the bar afterwards either expect or talk about particular person or persons who have a reputation for that?
I think if you're, for us, for instance, at PGA Championship, if we're not a familiar face to the tour players, so they're used to seeing their rule staff out there, and I think if they feel like they got a new guy, they might test him,
Okay.
and might go ahead and ask. I'm sure there's some out there that tend to, kind of question things more, feel like their lie's bad or whatever. But I can't not necessarily off the top of my head. Now,
Okay. What I mean, you have an insider's view of what it's like, yeah, as a observer to be a PGA Tour pro. I mean, it can't be an easy life. I mean, everybody thinks it's so glamorous, but they're living out of a suitcase, right? And it's pressure all the time. I mean, do you have a point of view on?
well, I think the guys in the top 50 are. It's a nice life. I think those are the guys who are you're have the best deals in terms of sponsorships and fly private, and that I think that fly private deal is a big deal. Once you reach that element where you're not slugging all your stuff commercial.
Yeah,
But yeah, I agree. I look at those guys and I think, man, to have to to basically play a weekend. If you make a cut, you technically didn't make any money. You move on to the next spot. You repack. You unload again. Now you got to get out there and perform. Then you got to go out and find your game and practice. It's hard. It's hard. That's why I give them a lot of credit. And you really gotta. That's why there's so many folks out, guys out and girls out there who have all the skill in the world, but when it comes down to that, I think real toughness to be able to live this life and perform well. I think there's a lot of great golf swings out there that just don't ever get to that place because yeah, it's difficult. And I look at the LPGA tour especially that does so much more flying back and forth to Asia
yeah,
and just say, man, and they try to do it so that they're over there for a couple weeks at a time. But these folks travel the world to play golf, and I can imagine, I can't fly East Coast to West Coast and think that I could even get up and swing a club the next day,
yeah.
6, 7 hours on a plane. But
What's the most fun part for you about being inside the ropes?
as coming from the teaching side, I just love watching them play, and watching the shots they can hit and the things they can do at the highest level. The skill level of these players is amazing, and so I just enjoy watching them play. That's what's neat about having a closer seat than everybody else.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the new rules for 2023? I mean, what should the average player be aware of, or at least
Really,
know?
not too many changes. A couple of little subtle things. That again, there's some technicalities that I think most players wouldn't even have really known how they worked the first time that they've cleaned up a little bit. In terms of when you're one of the relief options for unplayable ball or ball penalty area where you're actually dropping back as far as you want to go on a line. They've kind of changed the relief area to be a full circle, and I would say nobody knows that.
Yeah.
The other thing, like I think the good move is to consider they're consistently looking at the penalties and saying, why do we penalize, for bad play? For example, once upon a time, years ago, if you hit yourself or your equipment with your own ball, now think about that. What kind
Mhm.
of shot did you just hit? You were it was a two-stroke penalty. So now the shot counting it. And then they said, well, the next step was, yeah, that's really kind of piling on. So they've made it one stroke, and then they finally said, well, it's still a really bad shot. Let's just let them play it. So no strokes. Um, and and so one this year that I think again is the right direction. So you get up on the ball, if you're playing by the rules, and you got up on the putting green and you mistakenly put down the wrong ball, you substituted a ball. That used to be two, and now that is reduced to one. I think that's I can't see how I gain a two ball penalty just by changing my golf ball, and
Yeah.
I hope that eventually even goes away.
Are there any other rules that you've always considered to be dumb or unfair?
The one that I wish could change, but I understand why it doesn't, would be just practice swings, touching the ground in a bunker. If you
Okay.
get in a bunker, but if you think about the big picture, um, if you got into a bunker and you made a bunch of practice swings and everybody else did too, imagine the result from a maintenance perspective. All this sand up on the green
Yeah.
and so I get it. I said I don't think anybody really gains a lot of. Now, if you're a bad bunker player, you can make 10 swings in there, and I don't think you're going to be any better when you actually try to hit the ball.
Right.
So,
Right.
but I understand also why it can't change.
Yeah. What's the most exciting thing you've you've witnessed personally on the tour?
The moments
Well,
or
I mean, for example, were you there in when Tiger won at the Masters in 2019?
I was,
Yeah.
yeah. That was that. That's I'm glad you brought that up because that was pretty cool. I was on the 15th hole that day, and so I got to see two things happen. I saw Molinari basically, you know, chunk it into the water, which and he was in the lead or near the lead at that point. And then I saw when Tiger came down, he just had this look about him, like that was the first I said, and seen that look before. I said, this guy's going to win this thing. And he
Yeah.
just had that. The other thing that, even though I didn't witness it personally, was my first visit to Augusta was the famous chip in on 16 where the ball hung on the hole.
Right.
And so I was already done for the day, and in the tournament office with the other officials were done, and you could feel the place shake. That it was so
Yeah.
loud, and so that
Yeah.
was that was pretty neat to be on property for that to happen.
Yeah.
That was cool.
The better than most chip, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have an opinion on the Live Tour?
Um, I, my opinion would be, I just if they wanted to, the player wanted to go there and honestly take the money, good for you.
Yeah.
It's a business. Um, I don't think necessarily there should be an avenue to come back in once you do, but that's for the tours to decide. But I don't really think. I think there's a lot really that goes back to the days of when Greg Norman wanted to do this type of thing 20 plus years ago, and I think there's still some sour grapes, and the idea of I can you name the one thing we chuckle about? Can you name a single team on the Live Tour?
No.
No,
The format bores
and
me.
I and I never will. It's just that team element is not interesting to me. I don't think
Yeah.
it. I don't think it really pertains to golf. Um, but again, if those guys want to do it for the money, go ahead and I think in terms of that, as we saw in Augusta, I think the one thing about what we saw there was you saw Brooks and particularly. Uh, Phil and Patrick Reed played very well, but they play well at Augusta. So I think the
Yeah.
idea there that the live players are every bit as competitive. I don't think they're going to be as competitive for that long with the 54 hole format and how they play. So it's like anything. A little revolution from time to time probably isn't a bad thing, but
Well, it jacked up the purses for
it
the
sure
PGA
did.
players,
It sure
right?
did.
If you had a bet either way, would you bet that Live will live or die eventually?
I know the pockets are as deep as there are anywhere, but I still don't know how long even the Saudi business will lose money. At
Yeah.
some point, there's got to be some look at it and say, well, what is this really gaining for us? All we do is pour money into it, and when you look at the tour, it's kind of the opposite. You see the $1 billion a year in charity that the tour generates,
Yeah.
and the profits for their sponsors. But that just doesn't seem to exist on the other tour. So I don't know how long that's sustainable.
Who officiates at the Live events?
They actually, interesting enough, once it was formulated, the first fellow that they recruited was a gentleman named Slugger White, who was the co-chief referee with Mark Russell on the PGA Tour for many years. So as far as I know, Slugger Slugger runs the rules side. There's another fellow that I'm really good friends with. He was a USGA, more so, and he's over there. And from what I hear, they're paid pretty nicely, as everybody else is. Um, but again, I haven't heard of really any rules instances at all on any of the. Not that I pay much attention.
Yeah. Would you ever work those events?
Live events?
Yeah.
No, no. I say that now. I mean, it's how big? How big's the bag of money?
We'll give you $10 million, Bryan.
Yeah, yeah.
So you mentioned Patrick Reed. He kind of has a reputation as a rules bender. Um, is is he scrutinized more carefully as a result of that baggage?
I think historically, there's been fellows who kind of once you get that rep, I think people look at you a little. They study you a little bit more, and
Yeah.
I think yeah, that's why so much of this, so many of these guys and girls, they don't want to no appearance of evil whatsoever,
Yeah.
and so once you get on that side, I think that's a hard thing to shake off. So
Yeah.
nobody wants that rep.
Yeah.
It is again, it's a game of integrity.
Yeah, that's right. Well, let me ask you a few more questions, and let me go back to the personal side. You've won a lot of recognitions and awards in your profession. Is there one that you consider to be more important to you or most important to you, and why?
Well, just got in, and I didn't have that on what I gave you. I got into the PGA Hall of Fame this
I should
fall,
have mentioned that. I knew that. I had it written down.
so
Sorry.
that was pretty good. That was pretty good.
You're only the 42nd person, right?
40, 40, 42, 43. And what's nice about that is that our Hall of Fame, all Hall of Fames can be whatever the local section wants to be. Ours has always been very, very much player oriented. So
Hmm.
I'm one of the few in there that don't have a deep history of wins playing wise. It's all service, which is a nice compliment. And to that being said, the National Horton Smith Award, that's an award given for helping fellow PGA professionals in education. And
Okay.
so to be recognized for helping other PGA professionals, yeah, that's really nice too. So,
Okay.
but
Was
again, that's,
Was Horton Smith the same individual who started the caddy program? What is it? The Midwest Golf
no,
uh,
I think that you're talking about the Evans Scholars.
Evans Scholar? Yeah. Okay.
Horton Smith he was the first winner of the first Masters, 1934.
Oh, okay.
PGA, but he really he dedicated in this. This is again back in the day, where golf professionals were still not really viewed as quote unquote very professional jobs,
Yeah.
and he did a lot to elevate the profession by making sure the membership were properly trained and acted properly. So and he was a brilliant player.
Yeah.
Uh, just got overshadowed by the time by the
Bobby Jones.
upcoming Bobby Jones, and
Yeah.
then when Hogan and Snead and Nelson rolled around. So
Yeah. And
yeah,
during that era, correct me if I'm wrong, amateur golfers were more respected than professionals.
yeah, yeah. The amateur side was always, read a great book with old Tom Morrison. As much as he was revered, the man was never allowed to set foot in the clubhouse.
Yeah.
And so no, the professional side eventually overtook the amateur side. A lot of that I think had to do with guys like Hogan and Snead, and then Arnold Palmer.
Yeah.
And then when TV came around, and that's and the jobs had changed so that the tour eventually these guys could make a living, because again, back in those days when even Hogan started out, he'd play the tour but then go back. He was the head pro at Hershey Country Club for
Yeah. That's right.
so once the tour became a way to make a living, it eventually overtook amateur golf.
I had occasion about 10 years ago to play at Bay Hill, and I went downstairs in the locker room, and it's not a really elaborate locker room. It's not very large. And I look over, and this guy's playing cards, and one of the guys is Arnold Palmer, and he's playing cards with his buddies, and he would play a scramble, I don't know, once or twice a week, and post his score like everybody else. And I mean, he's so unbelievable guy.
Yeah.
He was. So let me a couple more questions. you have a reputation as being easygoing and good natured. I mean, where did that temperament come from?
Yeah,
Couldn't
I
have
have
been your Catholic school training.
no, I have no idea. I got no idea. I just probably my brother, my half brother, unfortunately just passed away in December.
Oh, I'm
Uh,
sorry.
but he was the most mellow guy I ever met, and he was older than me. So I spent a lot of time. Like he was a coaching a lot of my sports and whatever. But the guy he was just inflappable, and never saw him mad in his life. And I'm like, that's not a bad way to go. Rather than have so I
Yeah,
don't know. I guess too in golf early on, I had a couple walking bags that I'd lose my temper a little bit and slam my golf club through the bottom of the bag and break the bag. And then now I'm walking around with wet grips all day. And I just kind of learned that the temper thing's over me. I don't need
yeah.
it.
Well, talking about your brother, I mean, is there a person or a book or a poem or some kind of a quote that has served as a source of personal inspiration for you in your life?
No, not no. I don't know that I'm wired that way.
Okay.
I just admire, I just admire I admire the Palmers and the guy, the people that are just go Jack Nicklaus, just Byron Nelson, the people that just can go through life with a lot of grace and just seem like they treat people the right way.
Yeah.
That's a lot of inspiration. We don't see that much in our current culture, do we?
Well, no comment on that. Yeah, yeah. Do you have any advice for a young person who's thinking about a career as a club or teaching professional?
It looks. I think, especially, I've had a lot of experience with that. With we have in the PGA of America, the PGA PGM Professional Golf Management Program at roughly 18 universities, and so a number of local kids through the years wanted to go through and went through them. It just would be to say, like, look at this business as it really is. It's a service business.
Hmm.
You got to be cut out of that cloth where realize that weekends are that's when people play, so don't you're not getting weekends off. You're going to work long days. Everybody thinks you play a lot. Some do if you're in the right scenario, but really give the business a thorough look. And I always said to some of these younger guys, like, look, go just work at a club for a summer and watch, see what happens, see what the real thing is. Now, if you come away from that and say, "Gee, I just like it, like the environment," which many do,
Hmm.
yeah, go ahead. But other than that, the biggest problem is it's not. You take the same kid who comes out and gets a business degree, which is what the PGM management is, but then gets into private sector business, and the salaries much different.
Yeah.
I think you got to give it a good look. If it's for you, it's great. Great for me, but everybody's different. It looks looks cool, but
Yeah. At
yeah,
the end of the day, it's kind of a retail business, meaning that you
sure,
got to deal with a lot of personalities, air quotes. You know what I
yeah.
mean? And some of
And,
those personalities are not pleasant, and you got to have thick skin.
and I'm lucky to have done my career up in the Northeast, where I get a solid chunk of time, 4 months or so a year, where I'm able to go south. But you look at anyone in a climate where it's year round, it's truly that it's a 52 day a year job, which often for the people in the South includes Christmas and
Yeah.
everybody. So
Yeah.
yeah, you just said it. It's a service industry.
Yeah. Two more questions. One is you told me about your wife, which I didn't know. To have two rules officials in the same
It's a
family.
wife in technical terms. Truly, I gotta say, we're not technically married, but it has been 30 plus years. So
Well, is anybody really technically married?
yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, uh, so can you share any other personal insights? What do you do when you're not serving the members of Black Oak Golf Club?
We just this year we discovered pickleball.
You did.
Got a little pickleball this winter.
Okay.
Yeah, I like to have a little more time for that. So that's been kind of fun. But we'll play. We do same thing. It's just like anybody else. If we both get the same day off for the week, we'll go. We play during the winter. Not a ton.
Yeah.
Neither of us have that drive to like. I see my fellow golf pros who are retired in Florida, playing 5-6 days a week.
Yeah.
I don't need that. Once or twice is just fine.
Yeah.
So we're both pretty capable of kicking back. That's for sure.
Okay. So my last question is, what have I not asked you that you want to talk about, or that you thought I would ask you and surprised I didn't?
No, I think it's pretty thorough. It's been fun. Uh, I've got nothing else to say. I think you got it all out.
Found out about your feral cats.
But yeah,
So
my
it's,
yep,
it's still
sitting over
watching
there.
you?
Yeah, he's asleep. That's all they
Okay.
do.
Okay.
It's really a true statement. They sleep for 23 hours a day, and then you terrorize you for an hour. But
Yeah. Well, thanks,
yeah,
Brian. It's been great. I
my
really
pleasure.
appreciate your time. And
Let's try another one of those lessons and see if we get on the other side of 16 this time.
it's not going to help, but I am going to take you up on that. So thanks again. I'll see you soon.
Okay, thanks.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.